Pixel Planet was formed in 1998 by Tony Beckwith from Brighton and were purchased by Climax Games the next year as a subsidiary, renaming themselves Climax Racing as throughout the partnership they focused primarily on racing games, most of them so-and-so, with the MotoGP titles being considered their best work at a time when multiple developers released a MotoGP game the same season. And after MotoGP 07, Climax Racing was bought out by Disney Interactive Studios and renamed Black Rock Studio. Sticking with motorbikes, their first title was Pure, which is basically SSX if you replace the snowboards with quad bikes and the snow with gravel. It became one of the most highly received motorbike-based racing games in recent memory, but the team at Black Rock Studio weren't the kind to make sequels. They wanted something completely different. Split Second was a concept they envisioned while researching the specs of the 7th-gen consoles before they were officially released around the mid-2000s, an idea they couldn't do on the likes of the PlayStation 2 or Xbox. They believed as tech opened more windows graphically, game developers focused a lot more on the detailed vehicles, so BAries went the other way, making the circuits and environment around it the main focus. Their first core concept was a racer in which while you were driving, the circuit layouts could be changed, with lots of brainstorms to make this idea work in the most exciting way visually, with the weather as the catalyst being considered for a long time. But they eventually came up with the so-called power plays, which are triggered by the player's command, and basically expanded from there, including everything right and wrong about action movies over the last 20 to 30 years. Like, what if Michael Bay took over NASCAR? Split Second, or Split Second Velocity in the PAL regions, was released on May 2010 for the PlayStation 3, portable Xbox 360 and PC, and despite receiving equally positive reviews as Pure, the sales numbers didn't reflect it, most likely due to the oversaturated market in the racing genre, with this, Blur and Modnation races all being released literally 7 days between each other, and players preferring to wait for Gran Turismo 5 and Need for Speed Hot Pursuit instead. Wrong place at the wrong time basically, and I admit I'd never even heard of Split Second until nearly a decade later when I got so many comments and videos asking me to review this game. The poor sales also means it isn't the cheapest racer out there, so I had to overpay a bit to get this copy. And more hastily, as the main reason I'm finally reviewing Split Second is because it's got the most votes in the latest Patreon game suggestion thread. Thank you Alex Dundee and KezaBFZ, but the reality is that it's another review in the making for this channel, so let's see if this destructive TV show style has aged well.
Welcome to the show! You've done well on the written tests, but now it's time to prove your skill on the track. And do enough out there to impress me and you'll secure your spot in the premiere episode of the new season of Split Second.
It's crazy to think a video game that looks like this is published by the same media company known for bringing us all this as well. Like, can you imagine this being an actual reality TV show on Disney+? Then again, Disney have the money to buy 20th Century Fox, Marvel and Star Wars, so I'm sure they have enough change left over to buy a city and blow up all the large buildings for the sake of reality TV. Or we could just stick to the Death Race franchise. Anyway, I love it, the TV show style it goes for. The narration, credits, the drama, sound effects, an OST that sounds like it was ripped from Race Driver Grid, and even the in-game HUDs are placed in a way that it gives the surroundings more room to show off its scripted chaos. Every circuit looks like it's set in the same city as the one in Need for Speed Undercover, its empty map set mostly during sunset, and the strong orange and light blue color balance, but in decay and way more detailed. In fact, graphically, it's one of the best looking arcade races of the 7th generation. Yeah, there's a bit of frame rate drop when things get really crazy and it only runs in 30 frames per second, but like I discussed in my Forza Horizon review, all it means is that you can compromise less in other areas. And in this reality TV show style it goes for, the frame rate is more suitable to a game like this. We're looking at the PlayStation 3 version for this review, and by October 2021 the console is nearly 15 years old, good lord. And I'm starting to notice how retro PS3 games look nowadays, mostly in 720p. Like, it occurred to me when I was playing this game. But with everything going on screen at once, Split Second looks really pleasing to the eye. Maybe too detailed for its own good, since the track is so decomposed it's hard to tell what is racetrack and what isn't. Instead of having power-ups attached to your vehicle, you trigger parts of a circuit whenever an opponent is close to it, and can range from a simple barrel drop from a helicopter to a building being blown in your face to altering a third of the entire circuit layout. It reminds me of Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transform with the way some tracks terraform throughout the race. One moment you're driving on the road, next lap it's falling apart and the car turns into a plane. Driving like a maniac, including drafting, close calls and drifting, is what fills your power meter. The controls feel simple but very heavy at first, like Daytona USA, and all the cars are different based on stats and strengths. But if there's one thing I'm usually consistent on, it's selecting a car that has a high drift stat, since they only drift when you want them to, because from my experience cars slide very easily, and it's the equivalent of waving the opponents by. You might be expecting me to say I wish there were customization options, at least visually, but I like the pre-made designs enough that it isn't necessary, although I initially thought there were multiple pre-made decal options here, but they're just PlayStation trophies attached to the roof, whether it's finishing a race without crashing or destroy a certain number of rivals. That'll do nicely. Playing with the whole reality TV show or YouTube podcast trope now that I think about it. Some of these power plays are kept a secret where after you complete an episode of events, you get a preview of the next one, like a DVD box set which immediately plays the next episode. And instead of calling the game's campaign career mode, it's called a season where the tutorial is an audition for a show called Split Seconds. And after it's successful, you have episodes to select with multiple event types like the Gladiator series. Earn enough points and you're invited to the elite events, which is some sort of championship which unlocks the next episode. And that's another thing I like about Split Second, the different game modes where the objectives are unique from any other racing game I've reviewed, and all around fun. Airstrike is where you dodge as many missile attacks from a helicopter. Reminds me of the traffic attack mode, also in Sonic and All-Stars Racing Transformed. I'm guessing after Sumo Digital ported the PSP version of Split Second, the developers liked it so much they decided to incorporate a few of the ideas into All-Star Racing Transformed. Anyway, Air Revenge is the same thing, except dodging the strikes fills your power meter to deflect the missiles at the heli. In short, destroy helicopter with your driving skills. So much for crew safety. Survival, you're trying to overtake as many trucks as possible while also trying to dodge exploding barrels falling from behind the backloads. And Detonator is a time attack where you have to dodge all the power plays in one lap. Basically Stuntman Ignition with more being destroyed on screen. The whole TV show is just a razor's edge survival fest and is better explained by just playing the game, but even on the first attempt it's easy to understand what to do. Now there is a little bit of luck involved since missile strike placement is random with every attempt, and whenever a power play or barrel causes you to slide, the game tries its best to bolt you into a wall. However, these events are nothing compared to the actual races. This was probably the hardest part to explain, no pun intended, because this will affect your experience based on how challenging you like your games to be. Split Second supposedly has an adaptive AI system where the game becomes harder the more you win, and it becomes accustomed to your driving style, similar to the career mode in Forza Motorsport 4. I do believe it exists since I decided to go back to the older events I skipped after advancing through the episodes for easy points, and they felt just as hard to win as the later races. And since there's no difficulty option in the settings, this honestly makes Split Second one of the hardest racing games I've ever played, at least in the arcade subgenre. However, the question is it the right sort of difficulty? Now, I understand the intention of not wanting the player to easily cruise the whole season without spoiling the plot, nor go the Mario Kart Blue Shell route. The adaptive AI system it uses, it might appear as a way of saying how good I am at racing games if it's that hard that early into the season mode, or a way to encourage the player to use those power plays. But to me, it's simply a cheap way to increase the difficulty to the point that it makes the opponent so blatantly on a level where you can finish flawlessly, not crash and have the acceleration wedge the entire race and still finish in the bottom half. And it started becoming a common occurrence as early as the third episode. You always start at the back of the grid, so it's easy for the opponents in front to pull away on the first lap, and they're certainly not going to make any mistakes in the process. The way opponents blissfully overtake is comical, and whenever you try to defend your position, it always seems like you're on the receiving end, like the opponent has a scripted path you can't stop. You're always begging for an alternative, like a boost or takedown mechanic, just something to get the edge over the opponents. In fact, out of instinct, I was desperately trying to ram opponents into walls, believing you can take them down. That's the thing about the takedown mechanic in the Burnout franchise. It was a much more aggressive way to shut your opponents up, and therefore became a perfect stress reliever. It was also more dependable whether you're charging through the field or maintaining a lead. It never let you down. The track power plays in Split Second aren't as reliable as a missile attached to the car, far, and you'll more likely take down yourself rather than the opponent if you're not careful. It's all about learning where those power play spots are, working out which ones are the most effective, where the opponents are at that moment, whether to use a blue or red one or avoid ones triggered by opponents. So I suppose there is a little bit of strategy, but going back to the level variety, the actual circuit count is low for the number of events in the season mode. There are a few variations, and again, winning races is all about track memorization. But by the time you reach episode 6, coming up on Split Second, I've seen it, I know what happens, thank you Mr. Blow the picture for me. And add to that, the same song is used every time you restart a race. The so-called strengths of vehicle types feel more like choosing which weakness is the least bad, and at certain moments the luck-based difficulty boiled me to the point of beyond frustration, feeling like a bored zombie, completely uninterested in the chaos the developers put a lot of work into. And whenever I did place first, I felt lucky. There was no sense of satisfaction, like finally I guess the stars just aligned on that attempt. I just happened to hit 4 opponents on that one power play. I found myself 5+ seconds ahead and the opponents are too far away to trigger a power play. I guess that's one plus side about the opponents. There's no AI rubber banding system, so if you have a giant lead and don't crash, it's easy to maintain it. But again, being in that position all comes down to chance. And after all those endless attempts, there's still that sense the game is going to screw you over. The unique game modes I mentioned before aren't as bad since they have a set time or score, so there's actual trial and error involved, which is something that's non-existent in the race and elimination events, and even though they fill up half of every episode, I try to avoid them as much as possible. I will concede that part of my frustration comes with a personal dislike for reviewing hard games like this one. I'm trying to put out as many reviews as quickly as I can without compromising quality, and I see a hard part in a video game as a brick wall that makes these reviews taking needlessly longer to make. Now, overall, Split Second is a game that does almost no wrong. The TV show premise, the scope, graphics, sound effects, unique game modes, even driving mechanics. The footage appears as though I'm playing a spiritual successor to a classic Burnout title. I should be having the time of my life playing this game. It's flashy, colourful, rusty, grand in scale, and well made in nearly every aspect. The developers clearly put a lot of heart and soul into it. It's almost like they knew it wouldn't do well commercially in advance and threw in whatever they could in talent. Because that's exactly what happened in 2011, as metaphorically the show was cancelled and Black Rock Studio went defunct. But at least a lot of the members of the studios were able to form their own left and right, including Roundcube Entertainment, Short Round Games, Boss Alien, and probably the most successful example, Playground Games. So we can sort of say the commercial disappointment of Split Second indirectly led to the Forza Horizon franchise. That said, it's a sad way to go given they were only getting better. The game has only gotten more attention in the last few years, and there should be some sort of revisit on the concept of using the environment as a power-up or circuits that can be altered in the middle of a race. The only serious criticism I have with Split Second is its inconsistent difficulty, because for some that easily ruins everything. There were so many moments when I rage quit, come back, then win on the first attempt without feeling like I changed my strategy. It's a highly luck-based racer where the player would more likely enjoy this game for the whole spectacle rather than having their eyes stuck on every gold trophy. I wouldn't be surprised if every subscriber of this channel has played this game at least once and is waiting for an excuse to write something along the lines of, "Oh, it's not that hard, you just need to get good." Anyway, Split Second is a game that kicks ass, including yours, so anyone who hasn't played this game and is interested in auditioning, then consider this review as both a recommendation and a warning.